Hiya, I got your email and I wanted to give you one more piece of advice that might be helpful at this time, might not be, so I'll throw it out if it doesn't work. When you are looking at your list of terms, I think I have them right here. I was looking at all these different iterations of words, and the one thing that struck me is that we might be trying to cover these words, but we don't know which are more important. So maybe at this point we would do something of a ranking of value. So let me show you what I'm talking about. How do you test whether something is being used in the literature or not? Might be something where you could use to narrow your list down. So I'm going to go to one of the databases you had on your list, Family and Society Studies Worldwide, which we just got. Oh, and you'll notice, if you ever can't get into it, it has a maximum users of 5, so it might be why. But one thing that we have already determined is the value of the word or the phrase foster care. That one's not ambiguous and can't be misinterpreted a variety of ways. So let's let that be our anchor. You could do this with other ones as well. But in the context of foster care, and already it shows some different ideas of what it thinks is the most important, you can determine, for going back to your keyword list, which ones have the most value. And this is part of the literature review by just throwing them in there. So I'm going to do marital status. And we're assuming on this one that it's the people who are in the foster receiving end rather than taking on the service themselves. If that makes sense. So 21. What you would do with this is you would look at what happens when I do married instead, not marred, married. All of a sudden there's 37. So are they looking at marital status or married or marriage? You could do this and figure out which word is going to have the most bang for your buck. Part of this might be, do people get married afterwards, after exiting the foster care system? So you could determine that. Let me show you another example. Socioeconomic. My Tuesday typing fingers aren't working very well. But if we had socioeconomic, that's like the $60 word. There's 51, and we're looking at outcomes, but we're hopefully looking at the criteria that you're looking for, and you might add keywords. You could also look down here. How are these scholars describing the socioeconomic? And they even have like a list of factors, but there might be some ambiguity in there. But when you go and you look at a specific jargon that might be more accessible to people outside of the social work context, say for example, poverty, we go from 51, all of a sudden we go into like a much bigger sample size of 185. So could you use this as a way of reducing the amount of keywords that you're looking for? I think this might be something that you could try out in several of these databases. And are you going to go off of the scholarly audience? So you might be looking at socioeconomic specifically, or you're going to be looking at a more broader audience of maybe practitioners looking at these articles. This might help you narrow it down. Another one is, the scholarly peer-reviewed journals. That narrows it down somewhat, and it reduces the audience to just those scholarly journals. Another one that I would recommend is when you have that list of databases, you could have a discrete number of journal titles that you go into. So when you go under publication, those are the journal titles. And so what you could do is, if there were some that got below 3 hits or something like that, you could omit all of these journals and just focus on the ones. So Child and Youth Services Review clearly has triggered a lot of articles in child welfare, child abuse and neglect, the name of these journals. So you could narrow down by the names of journals inside of those specific databases as well. That might help you narrow down. So a good example is Current Opinion in Pediatrics. If there's only one article, you might be safe to say that you could winnow this journal off of your list. I think the main point is that your search is repeatable. And I think that would help if you just narrowed it down that way. Let me know if this helps or if this was too ambiguous myself. I'm still working on how to narrow this down. I think you have a great topic, but we just have to add some criteria to narrow it down. And describing keywords and describing the names of journals might be the thing that helps out. Let me know if it does. Hope you have a good Tuesday.